Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today I will be reading some Reddit stories while playing some Minecraft. The night I called the police on a ghost. I know how this sounds. It sounds fake. It sounds like I'm exaggerating. Like I'm about to tell you some overdramatic horror story I made up for attention. But I'm not. This actually happened. It started like any normal night. I was on a Discord call with my friend, just talking and laughing. The sun was setting outside, that weird in-between time when everything turns blue and shadows stretch a little too long. One by one, the streetlights on my road flickered on. Nothing unusual. We kept talking for maybe 20 minutes when I noticed something outside of my window. One of the streetlights wasn't steady. It was flickering, but not randomly, not like a bulb dying. It was uneven, deliberate, almost patterned. I picked up my phone and showed my friend through the camera. He watched it carefully, and he went quiet. And then he said, completely serious, "Bro, get out of there. That's SOS." I laughed. What are the odds, right? Yeah, what are the odds? Because not even 10 seconds later, every streetlight on my entire block shut off at the exact same time. Pitch black. The kind of dark that makes your stomach drop before your brain catches up. I just stood there staring out the window. And then, like something out of Stranger Things, every light snapped back on, all at once. And they were flickering, in that same uneven pattern. And then, boom! A transformer exploded almost directly above me. The sound was violent, not like thunder in the distance, not like fireworks. It sounded like lightning struck 10 feet from my face, like something detonated. There was a flash that lit up the entire street, followed by a crack that made my ears ring. I almost screamed. I ran inside, heart pounding, trying to explain to my friend what just happened. I remember saying it sounded like a bomb went off in my neighborhood. And then the chaos started. Car alarms, all of them. Up and down my street, alarms began screaming into the night. Headlights flashing, horns blaring. It echoed between the houses like some kind of warning siren. And then I heard something that made everything worse. The alarms inside my own garage, my parents' cars, going off. Here's the thing, my parents weren't even home. They left earlier for dinner and a friend picked them up. I was alone. Alone in a dark house with transformers exploding and every car on the street screaming. I ran around the kitchen trying to find both sets of keys to turn the alarms off. My friend was still on the call, asking if I was okay, and I was shaking so hard I could barely think straight. My dogs were terrified, barking, whining, pressed against my legs. I finally managed to turn the alarms off. The street was still a mess of noise outside, but my house was quiet again. Almost too quiet. I went back to my room, trying to calm down, trying to tell myself it was just a power surge, just bad wiring, just something explainable. And then every light in my room turned red. Now, before you call me a liar, let me explain. I have Govee lights connected to Alexa. Their default color is red when they reset. I know that. Logically, I knew that. But logic doesn't work very well when you're already on edge and your entire street just looked like a scene from Stranger Things. My whole room glowed red. My dog stared at the door, and I felt this wave of dread crawl up my spine. Then the light shut off completely. Darkness. That's when I hit my breaking point. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? I remember taking a deep breath and saying, "Excuse my language, but there's some weird stuff going on in my neighborhood." The dispatcher responded calmly, like this was just another Tuesday. "We've gotten calls about a blown transformer. This is what you mean?" "Well, yeah, but also the streetlights were flickering and all the car alarms went off and my room lights just changed colors. It's straight out of Stranger Things." She did not laugh. "Okay, we're sending power units to investigate." I thanked her and hung up, and then I just sat there on my bed, holding my dogs, waiting. Over the next couple of days, I talked to my neighbors, checked the Facebook groups, and explained everything to my parents. Apparently, there had been a major electrical failure involving a fiber optic line. It caused a spark that triggered a chain reaction. Transformers blew, voltage spiked, systems glitched. That explains the explosion. It explains the streetlights. It even explains my spotlights resetting to red. But no one could explain clearly why every car on the block went off at once. And for some reason, that's the detail that sticks with me. I know it wasn't a ghost. I know it was electricity and bad timing and coincidence. But when you're alone at dusk watching your street flicker what looks like an SOS before a transformer explodes above your head, it doesn't feel like science. It feels like something was trying to get your attention. And that's the night I called the police on a ghost. This is the second story. The night my friends and I almost died. I've never told anyone this story in real life. Not my parents, not my friends. It's been 3 years, and I still don't know if the man in the field was just watching us or waiting for something worse to happen. This happened about 3 years ago, and at the time, I didn't know who to tell or talk to because I was in complete shock. The two friends I was with that night, and I decided to keep it to ourselves. I have two friends. Let's call them Zach and Jake. One random day when we were bored, we decided to host a party at Zach's house over the weekend. He had a big enough house, a huge backyard, and a pool, so it was perfect. It was also the weekend right before spring break, and his parents were out of town, which made it even better. When the day of the party arrived, we met up hours earlier to set everything up. Later that night, around 80 people showed up and even more came after. That's when the drinking started. Around 1:30 a.m., people began heading home, but me, Zach, and Jake still had a lot of energy left. I should mention that Zach's house was the last one in his neighborhood. Behind his backyard was a massive cornfield stretching about a mile long. I don't remember the exact distance, but there were no houses behind it, just fields. Zach also had a gate in his backyard that led directly into the cornfield. Zach owned a Can-Am. It had two seats, but someone could stand on the back. Around 2 a.m., three of us had the bright idea to take it up to the field while blasting music. I was driving, Zach was in the passenger seat, and Jake was standing on the back. We cruised around the field for about 30 minutes before getting bored and decided to head back, but we decided to take one last turn. Halfway through the field, a man suddenly appeared. He looked around 60 years old, with gray hair, wearing a vest, and holding a hunting rifle with a scope. It was hard to see him clearly because it was pitch black. The only light came from the Can-Am's headlights. We passed him without stopping, and about 500 feet later, the Can-Am suddenly shut off by itself, even though the keys were still in the ignition. My heart dropped. We were still close enough that he could see or hear us, but when we looked back, he was gone. After a few seconds, which felt like minutes, the Can-Am finally turned back on. We didn't say a word. We just drove straight back towards the house without looking back. Before going inside, we stopped to catch our breath and process what had just happened. That's when we heard a loud bang and something metal hit the Can-Am. We froze. A second later, we heard another shot ring out and something whizzed past us. That was enough. We jumped back on the Can-Am and sped home. We drove through the backyard, parked it, ran inside the house, and locked every door and window we could. We turned off every light inside and outside the house. Zach had security cameras, so he went into the room with the monitor, showing the backyard and the front of the house. That's when things got even worse. Our car slowly drove through the backyard area and stopped. Its headlights stayed on, it just sat there idling for about 15 minutes. We didn't recognize the cars, and no one got out. We stayed completely silent, watching the monitors, afraid to even move. Eventually, the car drove away. We didn't sleep that night. What scared us the most was trying to understand why an elderly man would be standing in the middle of a cornfield at 2:30 in the morning, and how a car could have been so close to the house shortly after. The next morning, we checked Google Maps to see where the man could have come from. There were no houses, no shelters, nothing anywhere near the field. That meant he was either staying out there or he had been watching us the entire time during the party. We never told our parents or anyone else. 3 years have passed since then, and three of us have gone our separate ways and don't talk anymore. But it's a night I'll never forget, and one I still think about every time I hear something outside late at night. An old woman followed my sister and me home with a knife. This happened a few years ago when I was about 13 years old, living in the south of France. It's not the most horrific story you'll ever read, but it still disturbs me to this day. Every afternoon after school, I would take the bus to my little sister's elementary school and pick her up. She was 9 at the time. We lived in a small, affluent village outside the city. It was quiet, pretty, and known for being very safe. Nothing bad ever happened there. Our house was on the other side of town, built on a hill. To get home, we had to walk up to the top and then take a long, steep road going downhill. In the winter, it gets dark early, and that road was almost completely unlit except for only one lamppost at the top, and then pure darkness. The day felt completely normal. My sister and I were laughing and chatting like we always did. We had taken this path for years, and there was no fear at all. When we reached the top of the hill and started walking down, something suddenly felt very wrong. I can't explain it properly, but I just had this overwhelming sense of unease, like my body knew something my mind hadn't got up to yet. Instinctively, I turned around, and that's when I saw her. An old woman was walking behind us. I knew almost everyone in that neighborhood and I had never seen her before. What immediately struck me as weird was just how fast she was walking. Far too fast for someone her age. I was absolutely certain no one had been behind us before. I always paid attention to our surroundings because my sister was so young. When she noticed I was looking at her, she smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile, it was unsettling. Something about it made my heart drop. I'd met hundreds of elderly women in that village, but I had never felt this kind of fear before. I didn't say anything to my sister, I didn't want to scare her, but I just kept walking, trying to act normal. At that point, our house was only 300 meters away. Suddenly, without explaining anything, I said to her, "Run." She looked confused but trusted me, and we both started sprinting. I glanced behind us, and that's when my blood ran cold. The woman was no longer just walking, she was almost running, and she was holding something in her hand, a knife. I don't even remember thinking, I just moved. I pulled out my keys, opened the gate to our house, and shoved my sister inside and slammed it shut behind us. I told my sister to go into the house immediately, while I stayed outside for a moment, shaking, trying to make sure the woman hadn't followed us. That's when I saw it. A shadow of 2 feet under the gate. She was standing there. I knew she couldn't get in. The fence was about 3 meters high, but I was absolutely horrified. There was a stranger with a knife who had followed two children all the way home. After what felt like forever, but was probably 2 minutes, the feet disappeared and she left. I never saw her again. Years later, we moved to the United States. I never told my sister the truth about why we ran that day, and she still doesn't know. But I know one thing for sure. If I hadn't trusted that feeling, if I hadn't listened to my instincts, this story would have ended very differently. One of the scariest moments in my life. I was 16 female at the time, and I used to work occasionally with a family member to earn a bit of pocket money. During breaks, I would secretly go outside to smoke a cigarette. The employees from the neighboring houses would come at the same time. There is this man around 45 years old who often smoked at the same time as me. We made small talk about customers, weather, small gossip, nothing special. One day, he had just told me he moved in near my place, which he knew because he was on good terms with my family. He said he was throwing a housewarming party and he had invited everyone who worked from both of the workspaces, and he told me to come. At that age, I was incredibly naive. I loved going out because I felt deeply lonely and sad, never had a boyfriend, boring life, etc. Any excuse to escape home felt good. So on the day I went, I rang the doorbell and he opened it and let me in. Immediately, he locked the door behind me and he put the key in his underwear. I looked around and quickly realized something was wrong. There was no one else here at all. I asked where everyone was. He said they had already come earlier and left. I reminded him he had said the party started at 2 p.m. He mumbled something about them coming earlier. I soon noticed he was tipsy. We talked for about 5 minutes and then he offered to show me the house, which was honestly very nice. When we reached the bedroom, he said, "Here's your room. Look, you even have a big walk-in closet just for you. I can make more space if you need." In my head, I was like, Error 404. I laughed nervously and said like, "Haha, yeah, you're right. You're funny." We went back to the living room, sat down, and he suddenly tried to jump on me, trying to, you know. He touched me under clothes, kissed me, removed partially his clothes. I tried to push him away, and luckily he was more drunk than I thought. One big kick was enough to knock him to the floor. Sitting there confused, he said, "I don't understand. You don't want me to?" All those times he smiled at me, waved to say hello, talked to me while smoking, laughed at my jokes. I felt pure disgust rising inside of me. Those words made my stomach turn. His stupidity made me dissociate. I told him I appreciated talking to him at work, but that's it and we were just colleagues. I left it vague because I was afraid he might get angry. That's when he lost it. My ex-wife was the same name as you. She was the same beauty mark, the same mixed origins, the same face, hair, and body. You're her twin. And better. When I saw you, I couldn't believe my eyes. You're so beautiful, like a younger, sweeter version of her. Anyway, we'll see how we're going to arrange the house for you, our future children. Buying it wasn't the hard part. That's how I knew I was in real danger. Honestly, I saw myself die every time his heavy body leaned towards me. A man twice my size, drunk, psychotic, the full package. At some point, he went to the bathroom to pee. With how much alcohol he'd had, it took him a good 10 minutes. During that time, I called one of my coworkers, the man who was responsible for me at work. I explained everything and begged him to get me out. Unfortunately, he wasn't in town. He had trouble believing his friend could do something like this. He told me to try to leave by force, and if it didn't work, he would drive back from his weekend location to get me. I thought, forget it. My brain was racing at 10,000 kilometers per hour. He told me to stay calm and call the police. I had to hang up because the psycho came out of the bathroom. If you're wondering why I didn't call my parents, it's simple. They would have thought I was stupid for falling into that situation. My parents were the type to hit me for much less, and I wanted to avoid that. I tried again to say I needed to leave. That's when he said the sentence that completely broke me. No, you're not going back. We're gonna have so much fun. I was stunned, dissociated, frozen. No reaction at all. He tried several times to sleep with me. Each time I managed to distract him, or talk about anything else. Pure survival mode. I told myself my only chance was to play along until I found a way out. Later in the evening, I pretended I needed clothes and medication. This idiot had planned everything. Old clothes from his ex-wife, aka my twin apparently. He was getting tired from the alcohol and weed, his eyes closing on the couch. I told him I needed a very specific medication and that I would go and get it and come right back, quick round trip. He made me promise. The dirty kissed me for a long time. I stayed in character, acting sweet, for my life. He opened the door and told me that if I wasn't back by midnight sharp, he would call my mother's boss and get her fired and lie about his situation and then hurt my mom. He watched me until I turned the corner of the street, another glass in hand. After crying all the tears out of my body, in a completely broken state, I started walking towards my house. What was I going to tell my parents? My mother knew I was supposed to be at the housewarming. What if she got hurt because of me or lose her job? What would I do? That's when out of nowhere my guardian angel appeared on a bike. Hey, got a cigarette for me? Me, crying and shaking. Yeah, here. Whoa, why all the tears? What's wrong, kid? Tell me. So I told him the story, barely able to speak, hyperventilating, but I told him everything. If I don't go back, my mom is going to get in trouble. He stopped and asked me to show him the house. I refused to go back, but he convinced me I'd be safe, so he walked a bit and I showed him exactly where it was. He said, Alright, noted. I've already seen him. Listen, you go home, you sleep, and you forget this story, okay? But if I don't go back to him, don't even think about it. Forget it all. I'll text you tomorrow morning, okay? I went home. I was terrified, traumatized, but I eventually fell asleep shaking. The next morning around 8 a.m., I received a message from the bike thug. Everything's fine. I hope you slept well despite everything. Have a nice day. I just answered, What happened? Thank you so much. He never responded. The day passed. No news from the psycho. The day after that one, I ran into a coworker outside. He said, Damn, did you hear what happened to X? He just moved in and already moved out in 2 days. I asked how that was possible. He said, Some people broke into his house at night and destroyed everything. Absolutely everything, including his teeth. He doesn't have any front teeth left. He could barely talk when he came to pick up his stuff at work. That disgusting predator. I want to thank my lucky star again, the man I never saw again after that night. Real saviors do exist. Real men exist. I will forever be grateful. Alright, that is it for all of my Reddit stories today. I hope you guys enjoyed the stories, and if you liked any of the specific stories or you wanted to add any comments, please leave a comment, and I'll see you guys in the next one.